Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So in this short video, I'm going to explain the workflow that I recommend for creating movie clips with nested timelines. And the crucial concept here is that you're creating these movie clips with nested timelines in a separate file before you bring them into your main animation file. You might be thinking, so why would I want to do that? Well, the answer is pretty simple. What you see right here on the screen is a screenshot, a still from the movie Dark Crystal, which was directed by and created by Frank Oz, who was a special effects wizard who gave us Yoda and so many of those characters in the Star Wars movies. And this was a movie that used animatronics, these sort of like weird puppet-like, also sort of semi-automatic, semi-robotic things that interacted. And it was, a movie hailed for its special effects expertise. But the important thing to know is that Frank Oz and his team did not build out all of these little self-contained things on the movie set as they were telling the story. They actually had an assembly room, and in that assembly room, they had a props department that was working on all of these things and putting them together. Then they would bring them out onto the stage and they would deploy them in order to tell the story. And the same sort of analogy is true with Adobe Animate. So right here, if you look in my library, you can see a few things. You can see that I have a left arm, a right arm, and a torso. And what I'd like to do is actually, I'm going to drag these out onto the stage. I want to make just a silly little animation in which this character is flapping his arms to fly. It's very similar to what I did with the monkey, but I think it'll still work. So now the first thing I want to show you is kind of a cool trick. I have these 3 movie clips right there on the stage, and notice right now they're all in layer 1. I'm going to draw a box around all 3 of them and select them and right-click and select Distribute to Layers. And now if you look at my timeline, you can see that I've got left arm, right arm, and torso all on their own layer. Well, that's kind of cool. That's really convenient. And now I would like to also make sure that I'm centering this in the center of the stage. And so I am going to go to Modify and select my torso. And I'm going to go to Align and select Align to Stage. So you can align objects to each other or you can align them to the stage. I want to put this on the stage in the horizontal center of the stage. And I also want to put this in the vertical center of the stage. And that's really important to keep everything sort of aligned properly when I bring this into its own nested timeline. Okay, so now I've got the torso in the middle of the stage. I've got the right arm here. I'm just going to kind of get in here and let me zoom in a bit so you can see it. Let's try 150 maybe. 150. Okay, cool. So now I've got that arm right there, and then left arm I'll put over here on the left side, of course. And you're going to have to play around with stuff, obviously, to figure out like the best place to position your things when you're assembling them. But okay, so this is the basic idea. So now I've got my character, and I just want to set it up so that his arms lift up and then they go down. And so first of all, and they start here in the middle. So I guess I'll go up, and then I'll go all the way down, and then go back up to the middle. Let's see. Okay, so first what I'm going to do is take a look at my individual movie clip, and I'm going to hit Q to get the free transform tool. And once I do that, I'm going to move the little transform point. That's going to make it possible for me to rotate this thing on the shoulder pivot. Now, if you look at the other one where I haven't changed that yet, if I try to rotate this right now, it's not working because that transform point is in the elbow rather than at the shoulder where it needs to be. Now, this is driving me crazy. A few of you saw me struggling with this in a breakout room in Zoom. I could not figure out how to move that registration or that transform point, and then I realized you have to hit Q first, and once you hit Q, it'll let you move it. So if it's not letting you move the transform point, just hit Q. Okay, so now I have my left arm, my right arm, and my torso. And let's say I want to actually start, let's just kind of make this simple. I'm going to start out, before I do any animation, just kind of having the arms down here. And this is going to be a really simple, clunky animation. That's because the point isn't really the animation itself as much as just the process and the workflow. Okay, so let's see. Okay, stop being a perfectionist, Delwich. All right, well, that looks too crappy. Hold on. Oh, come on. Well, good enough for our purposes right now. Okay, so we've got the arms are right here. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit of a perfectionist. And oh, I know what I can do. Well, yeah, let's try this. Okay, that'll have to be good enough. Okay, so I've got my character right here. And first thing we know is that the torso is not going to move. So I'm just going to kind of go 2 seconds out And at 2 seconds, I'm going to insert just an ordinary frame for the torso. I'm using F5 to do that. You could right click and select insert frame. Now, right above that, for the right arm, I'm going to right click and select insert keyframe. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the left arm. And actually, I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to do Command Z. Command Z, let's go back. So I've got the torso there. I'm going to do it the official way for a motion tween, which is go to where you want it to begin, right click on it and say create motion tween. And then you can kind of drag it out to get to the time span you want. And then you move the arm. And I will do that right now. I'll just go ahead and hit Q and put it up like this. It looks like he's doing some sort of fascist salute, but that's just because I don't have the other arm right there. Okay, let's go back to the other arm, and let's stop him from being a fascist by making that a motion tween as well, and stretching out the timeline down to here, and grabbing that arm, the other arm, and now it looks a little less sinister. It does not look like I'm hanging out at a rally for politicians who shall not be named. Okay, so now the arms have been lifted, and if I go back and forth, you can see that our dude here is, okay, cool, he's lifted his arms. But we also want to probably have them go back down, right? So let's go to oh, well, here, let's see. We've got it going all the way. Let's just reverse the frames. So we've got them going like this. So what I can do now is take these two parts of the timeline, and I am going to right-click and select Convert to Frame-by-Frame Animation. And to make it simple for our purposes, I'll do a keyframe each frame. That's just going to make it a lot easier to copy and reverse these animations. And then the other thing I'm going to do is now go out, well, I'm going to copy it. Let me go ahead, and I'm going to highlight all of these things on the timeline. Very important part, when you're copying and stuff from the timeline, you need to copy from the timeline with copy frames. Normal Command C will not work. And now I can go and I can paste those frames. Yay, okay. So now I've got the frames that I just pasted, and what I'm going to do is highlight, oh, I don't want to move them. I'm going to highlight all of them. No, I'm moving them. Ugh, get out of my way, dude. There we go. I've highlighted all of them, and I'm going to reverse the frames. And then, of course, I'm going to put in the torso at the very end. And now let's see how this is working. All right, this is like he's basically flying, right? That is what we want. And you could say like, well, that looks really clumsy. And I'd say, yes, you're right. It does look clumsy. But for our purposes, this is all we need. Okay, I'm going to save my file here for a second. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to highlight everything on the timeline. I'm going to do it manually. I think there's also a right-click select all. And actually, let's see if I go select all frames. There we go. Now it's all highlighted. I'm going to, again, right-click and select copy frames. Now I'm going to create the new movie clip that has the nested timeline. I'm going to say insert new symbol. And I'm going to call it N, a small N. That just is going to be a reminder to me that it's got a nested timeline that I've put into it. That would kind of be like the equivalent, I think, on the Dark Crystal set of having people, like there's probably a table somewhere where they've got like final, animatronic devices ready for the set. That's kind of what that N means to me. Like it's a nested timeline. This thing is ready to be deployed now somewhere. I'm going to call it N-Man Flying. And it's a movie clip. I'm going to click on OK. And now I'm going to go to Edit and select paste. Nope, I always do that. See, I almost did it. And so I just want to draw your attention to it. If your workflow, if you've been having problems with this, you may be doing one of the mistakes that I often do, which is going to do like Command C or just to select the edit menu to paste it. But again, when you're pasting into a timeline, you want to go to the timeline and select paste frames. And then that'll work. You have to go to the timeline to paste the frames. Don't use the edit menu and don't just use normal Command C and Command V. Or Control C and Control V. Now look at what happened. It now has pasted this inside our movie clip. Our movie clip has this nested timeline, which is absolutely identical to the one we just created. And you can see it tells us, okay, you're inside this new movie clip called N-Man Flying. And so, fantastic. I'm going to go back out to the main stage and just go ahead and save my file. And you can see over here, we now have something called N-Man Flying. And so, it is now ready to be brought into another animation. But the way you can test it and make sure that things are going okay is to go to File and select New. And then just make an empty file, like that has one frame. I'm just going to make a standard empty file. And here it is. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I have to paste this guy into my library. And I did that wrong. Let me go back. I'm going to go to Assembly Flying Man. I'm going to right click and select copy on that movie clip that I just created. Now I'm going to go into my new file that I created. I'm going to go into the library. I'm going to right click. I'm going to paste. And when I do that, that's going to bring over my movie clip that I just created in Man Flying. It also brings all the little bits and pieces that are part of him. The left arm, the right arm, the torso, all that stuff will travel over as well. Now look at my main stage. I have just one frame on here, right? And so if I want to see if my movie clip is working, I'm just going to drag it down to the stage. And now if I test my movie with Control Enter or Command Enter, it should work. And the reason it's going to work, I mean, what this is telling us right here is that even though there is just one frame of animation on that stage, this animation is still moving. And that's because the timeline which controls this guy's animation is nested inside of that movie clip. And so now that I have him here, now I could do something more fancy. So if I wanted him to fly off the stage, for example, I could say, like, let's call this Flying Man. And I'm going to right click and select Create Motion Tween. And I will zoom out even further. Let's go to 50%. And let's make it kind of slow. I'll put it at 4 seconds. I'm going to just drag the end of this all the way to 4 seconds. And I will move him up like that. And now when I test my movie, it should work. Let's see. Yep. Okay, the timing's obviously off, but you get the basic idea. So I created my person in that separate file and copied him in, and he's now flying. So I want to go just one more time to revisit the steps that I went through. Oh, don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but I'm just going to kind of get the main points that you should remember. One interesting thing is I showed you that you can drag out the multiple parts of a movie clip that you're going to want to be playing with on your timeline. As you're starting to assemble, if you just drag them out to the stage and select Distribute to Layers, it'll give you the layers automatically, and then you can do the animation. The other thing is that I started doing the animation and got it the way I wanted that first half of the animation where his arms were lifting using plain old motion tweens. I also remember I had to move that transform point by hitting the Q key so I could get the little rotation point, the transform point, to be at the shoulder instead of the elbow. Once I had that first part working, what I did is I took those motion tweens and I highlighted them and I turned them into frame-by-frame animations. And I did that because it makes it a lot easier to copy and reverse the frames. Then, once I did that, I took all of those, that first half, and I right-clicked and I said Copy Frames, and then I over here just right-clicked and pasted the frames, and they showed up in the same order in the second half of the clip. Then I went and I highlighted all of those things, right-click, and I said reverse frames, and that gave me this character who was moving. The next step was to highlight all of these things, and I'm going to actually do this again because I can just create another movie clip that does the same thing. You know, I'm in my main assembly timeline. I've got this thing ready. I want to export it. I'm going to go to the timeline. I'm going to highlight everything, right-click, and select Copy Frames. And then I'm going to go to File, or Insert, New Symbol, and I'll say same dude, also flying. And I will say OK. And then you'll notice I started to try to paste everything in the center. That way lies madness. I do not encourage you to do that. In fact, I discourage you. In fact, just don't do it because you'll pound your head against the computer. But what's good to do is just go to the timeline, right-click, and select Paste Frames. And that will paste everything in. And then you can see, again, it's telling me, OK, I'm now inside something called In Same Dude Also Flying. When I go back out, I have in my library this thing here. And the process for testing to see if it worked was to create a new file, just a blank file that has nothing going on. There's like no animation at all. And then go back to your assembly thing and you find that movie clip and you right click and you select copy. And then you go into your stage and you right click and, or you go back to your library rather, and you click paste. I could have also pasted it on the stage. It would have done the same thing, but I think it's good just to think of it as you go from library to library. And now I've got Same Dude Also Flying. If I drag him out to the stage here and I test my movie, even though there's nothing else going on in this file except for that one frame, when I test the movie, he is in fact flapping his arms. And I can do whatever else I want with him. And realistically, you're going to be using these building blocks, whatever pieces you have that you're working with in your animation, the head, the shirt, the arms, you're going to be using those building blocks, and you'll have different versions of this. You'll have this person whose arms are flapping. Maybe you'll have one where he's stopped. Maybe you'll have one where he's waving his hands. And these are all going to be separate movie clips. They're all going to be separate movie clips with separate names that follow the same movie naming convention. Then you'll be able to bring them back into your main animation and assemble everything. And so that's the basic concept. I realize this is a 15-minute video. I think I encourage you to play it a little faster in YouTube to speed it up a bit. But I do think that this workflow will save you so many headaches. And just remember what we were talking about here with the Dark Crystal movie. Just remember that, even though it ultimately ends up looking like this with all these different pieces that are interacting, including kind of robotic things, it was all created first, assembled elsewhere, and then brought and assembled on the stage. And so that is my movie clip. Happy Friday.